So so I thank you, Mr. Vyas, for inviting all of us on this Saturday morning. Um, I'll just some of us have met before and we know each other. For the people whom I have not met or who don't know us, I run Matter, an architecture firm based out of Goa, and as an extension to uh, everything we do, we are also deeply involved with publishing. So we publish with H&R Johnson. In fact, we publish a biennial journal. I have 2 volumes with me here, and it's a beautiful thick book. I think maybe some of you might be on our list or must be receiving them. We also have as collateral to the journal is an online platform called InsideReview.in. Whenever you have time, you can go. It's very nice, very curated, very professional content on architecture and design in India. And the whole idea was, I mean, a week back we were discussing how to make the most. I mean, we have all been uh, pushed or swung into this unprecedented situation, and how do you make the most of it? Also, what we realized is that it has this kind of unique, you know, situation has forced us to rethink what we have been doing, or let's say the status quo with which we have all been very comfortable with for a long time. It has thrown open some very sort of serious and demanding questions on how the profession should work, what is the new sort of idea of interaction with people from the office, people outside the office. How are we responsible in some way to the migrant workers and people on the site? And all, so there are these more critical questions that we have been in the last couple of let's say 2 months forced to think about. So this today's webinar, I think we have also done a lot of back and forth between me and Mr. Vyas on what kind of questions and the frameworks that largely that I will let him describe them better. Um, uh, and to close, I mean, we from my end, we are also hoping that these set of webinars that we are having, we are kind of hosting, they lead to more discussions online. When we are recording all of these, we will transcribe this, we will condense these into probably some very concise readings, and they can be circulated within our network, within the community of students and young designers we know. And also, beyond these webinars, there will be some these conversations will probably prompt some critical questions for our community or fraternity to think about. So that's pretty much from my end. I would request Mr. Vyas to um, you know uh, moderate further, pose the questions. Mr. Vyas. Okay, I think there is some technical issue on his end. Um, okay, then I think if we can unmute our mics, I'll let me start by. Huh.
Yeah,
Hold on.
sorry, I got disconnected. But Ruturaj, I think we'll have to do a teamwork because I see some
Yes,
issues
you are
today.
sure. So no, I just said I just introduced Mr. Vyas, and I think you dropped off as when I was just handing over to you. So if you can open with a brief introduction and some questions that you want to start with, then we can take it from there.
Sure. So let me start with the pretext itself that this unprecedented global COVID-19 pandemic has crippled the whole world in last few months. But this is not the topic about our corona also, in a way. But we are observing lockdowns from, I think, from March, later part of the March, although it started in Jan, a lot of places, and prevention is the only cure, it seems. Cities are deserted. We feel lucky that we are safe and at house arrest, although, and economic activities are observing a complete hiatus everywhere, but I believe that some work is starting. Government is also active. Doctors are there, police are there on the roads and the hospitals, and they are trying to do their best what is possible. Do we see answers coming from fresh thinking about designs which could better respond to COVID? That was the thought. We had a beautiful
I think we've lost him again.
Uh, yeah, I
Good
think so.
morning, Mr. Rituraj. I think,
Yeah, I think I'll take over. Yes, yes.
Dinesh, it is better that due to connectivity
Yeah,
issues,
sure,
maybe
sure.
at his end. Yeah.
No problem. So I will open by asking a simple question. I think to Saurabh and Pony, if you guys can react
Yes.
to
Yes.
this. I think we have run our practices with certain assumptions before this pandemic. I mean, we have not really questioned the standard. Have always assumed that we will be create spaces for a lot of people to come together. Community, the word community was always present in the way we used to design. There's this whole question of how people interact with their spaces and the way way they perceive architecture has fundamentally changed. Spaces like movie theaters, for example, it will take a long time to reconcile with what has happened. Even one of our clients, they run schools, and their big question is, how do you tell children about social distancing? Is there something? Is there a way to even? Is it even possible to have 40 children in a classroom, and then what kind of social distancing would they? What would a second grader or a third grader would how would he or she understand about social distancing? There are these fundamental questions of how hygiene and how how we look at spaces now from the perspective of health and hygiene. So I want to open by asking Shoaib and Pony to reflect on what kind of questions, critical questions, as this have you been thinking about? Or has these last 2 months kind of thrown to your practice? You run significantly, let's say, large practices. Your projects are you have been involved with public projects. So let's start with that. What is the nature of thinking for these kind of projects when it comes to how people will now interact with what kind
Can I
of
go first?
yeah, Pony, take over.
Hi. For me, architecture is basically a sensory experience. So, good or bad design depends on how people, behave, think, and feel in a space. So, taking into cognizance the current COVID-19 scenario, this is going to create a lot of drastic changes into how architects are perceived, because we've been telling our clients a lot of good things which they don't listen to. And this is a great awakener for builders, for clients, to understand the fact that three factors: social distancing, wellness and health, and a no touch technology would be the key drivers to this situation with design. And I think we will be game changers, we will be influencers, architects and collaborators, manufacturers, what have you. And I wanted to quickly touch upon three levels of design: urban design, architecture, and interior design. The reason I want to talk about it is because we are involved in all these three levels in our practice. And there's been a lot of inputs coming from our clients as we speak. So if you take into consideration urban design, there should be decongestion of cities. We need to develop suburban clusters around the main city, and the city itself just becomes a downtown business area. So if there's a pandemic scenario, you just shut off one suburban cluster and it doesn't spread all around. The other level is architecture. And in architecture, you're going to see a lot of migration from multi-story buildings for housing to standalone houses. And the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana project was a brilliant idea because we ourselves are working on these projects where we create isolated units of housing. And this will happen in all three strata of society: HNIs, middle class, and the lower middle class. Then the other aspect in architecture is sustainable architectures. And we architects have been shouting hoarse from rooftops and telling that cross ventilation is important. You need to bring in courtyards, you need to use local materials and things like that. You can't just depend on a lot of imports from China. And so these principles become very, very important. The other issue is the business of open plan houses. You know, the layout of houses can no longer be open plan. And this also applies to offices. You cannot have those big, large bullpens with zero partitions. As we speak, my clients are quickly asked for changes in office layouts. You're going to have shoulder height cellular cubicles like you had in the 1960s. That's all going to come into force. And of course, we're going to use plexiglass so people can see each other. Now, these are the changes that one can expect in architecture. Coming to interior design, there has again been a lot of inputs from my clients. Right now, they've asked us to change specifications, and so antibacterial products like antibacterial paints, hardware, surface tops, electrical switches, what have you, will come into force. And there's going to be a lot of importance given to no-touch technology. You will need to have we'll have to have automatic doors, windows, Li-Fi technology. There's going to be a lot of technological inputs as we speak. And also remember, people are going to start working from homes in a very big way. So the norm of creating home offices in houses is going to be number one on designers' agendas. And interior design or touching upon home offices, creating acoustic padded offices, a lot of retrofitting in terms of technology. And remember, there's going to be a 60% cut in office spaces. People are going to start working from home. And the main office is just going to be once in a week meetings or once in a month meetings. So these are the main drivers and changes that you will see in these three levels of design. And my last point is that government has to think, and even designers have to think in terms of going Swadeshi. We will need to look at local manufacturing. My projects have basically crashed on timelines because a lot of stuff hasn't come in from China, from Europe, and what have you. So the only way to protect ourselves in terms of pandemics like this is to encourage local manufacturing. I say this because China historically has had a lot of viral attacks, not just now, it's been happening for centuries. They've been isolated and therefore we never knew the problems associated to these pandemics. Now that we have got into globalization, we have realized that the viral infection from there can spread to the West, it can spread all over the world. And therefore, some level of protectionism for our industries, I think, is very critical. I hope Indian industry and government is watching this program.
Shurab, would you want to react to that? To what?
Well, what I'll do is that, I have a couple of, my opinion on a couple of these issues also. So I think first I would like to sort of voice my opinion on these things. So, I think your simple question was, are things going to change? And I think the simple answer is yes. Will it change drastically? I think a lot of that depends on how this really pans out. I think we're all still grappling with the exact nature of the problem. I think, every day we hear different things on how the virus spreads, what surfaces it attaches to. And I think a lot more work needs to go into understanding the whole problem before we really come out with solutions. I think just the same way that 9/11 sort of changed the security concerns in the world, I think this pandemic is going to change a lot of this sort of health related and sort of environmental issues that first we as architects grapple with, and then of course we sort of hand out solutions to our clients. So I think there will be changes. I personally, we personally work on a lot of office and mixed use projects. So I'd like to give you, some examples over there, because we have been having discussions with our clients. We've been talking to people, to user groups. And I think to begin with, one of the things that Pony talked about, I think is very true. I think the whole journey, whether you're arriving at your place of work by public transport or you're actually coming in your own car, I think the whole journey from when you enter the complex till you get to your desk is going to become a very different experience now. I think the idea is going to try and make it as sort of quick as possible, what I call sort of touchless and talkless. You will be interacting with fewer people. I think, technology will sort of take over, where right from when you sort of get security checked at the gate, you will get a sort of a code or a message, right? What elevator to use and, how to get to your office fastest. So this whole interaction with people, where it's necessary, already hotels were sort of experimenting with using robots at reception desks and things like that. This sounds very unfortunate, because I think, we as human beings like to interact socially, but unfortunately, where in buildings which have a sort of a large public interface, I think this is going to become a reality. A simple thing like elevators. Today, people are saying, how do we decongest our elevators? So, you might need to start now building in large waiting areas, before you actually get to the elevators. I hope it doesn't, almost resemble an airport and, the waiting areas before the gates, where, you have holding areas. And then, as the gate opens or as an elevator bank opens, you start getting into those elevator banks. But if some of the problems, the way we understand today, become a reality, then, those are the sort of changes we will need to start introducing into these public buildings. Again, in office buildings, the whole amenitization of these buildings, we used to always look at ways that we could actually get people to interact, spaces for people to interact. How can we get people closer to each other? A lot of that is now going to get, thrown out of the door. Areas, high density areas like gymnasiums, food courts, will they really be appropriate for these projects anymore? I think that's a big question to ask. So the whole amenitization of some of these projects may start taking, on a different hue. On a different note, we were having a discussion the other day with one of our housing clients, and if this work from home, especially in condominium projects, if work from home does sort of increase to a large extent, then in the clubs or in the social spaces, instead of having, I think a lot of space will get devoted to meeting rooms, discussion rooms, small seminar rooms, where a group of people working in that particular community could actually get together for meetings, so you don't have to keep on inviting people into your house for that, but there are spaces within the community where you can actually go in and do this. And, especially may not be in developer housing, but we also do quite a lot of institutional housing. So especially in institutional housing, that would make a lot more sense also. I differ slightly with Pony's, numbers when she talks about, maybe office space coming down 60%. I think, a lot of the numbers that we are hearing today are sort of Western influenced, I think the realities, the social fabric, the social realities, and other economic realities are different in India. And I think we sort of did a study with some of our clients in Cyber City, which has almost 13 million square feet of office space. And we found that, yes, office space demands will come down. Individual offices, their demands may come down, but I think it'll come down in the region of about 30%, not really much more than that. Because a large part of the workforce are people who have come in from smaller towns, smaller cities. They're staying in very sort of congested environments. Sometimes, 3 and 4 people are sharing a room. So how do you ask these people to really work from home? I think, this is, if, with a certain section of society, this is a bit of a romanticized notion. But I think the joint family system, people sharing rooms may not allow the percentage to really go that high. And we must remember that at the end of the day, for a lot of these people, for maybe 50, 60% of the people working in the offices, coming to office is actually the highlight of the day. They come into an environment which is, today the offices are really well done, they're well amenitized. So that really becomes the highlight for them. So I think for a large percentage, the possibility of working from home may not exist. There are connectivity issues and things like that. So I think these are some of the realities that we will have to grapple with going forward.
I want to bring in a perspective from Kiran. Mr. Vyas, you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to add, yes, very true. And a lot of things, even in yesterday's debate also, a lot of things may seem to be a knee-jerk reaction to a particular condition, which may or may not sustain. And what will sustain is the basic fundamentals of the architecture, where we take care of need of hygiene and need of sustainability. My another question will be, yes, you may go ahead to ask Mr. Kiran, and then we can take my question. My related question to this was this: how much architecture has has to change, or is there any change, or there are some sort of you can say arrangements which can still make whatever we have. See, we have created a huge space in last 3 to 4 decades. Suddenly everything is not going to vanish, and when you created, you had a vision of future also. So is it so bad really that we have to question the existing spaces itself, Architect Saurabh, or it is just a question of managing them well?
No, I think management is going to play a very big role. Even this issue about elevators, for example. If people are sort of asked to really come in at different times into the buildings, so management of a system will also help. But I think the question really is that how this the situation really pans out. If it is a short-term problem, then a lot of the things that I talked about may not be necessary. But if it is going to be a more long-term problem, because managing also has its own issues, then I think we may need to look at architectural and spatial solutions really to solve some of these issues.
Thank you, Dr.
I think from that question, I mean, I would naturally, I wanted to bring you on, Kiran, if I can. You have designed quite a few public spaces. And how do you think the nature of these spaces would change? And I think from what Mr. Vyas asked, if is there a way to kind of reconcile with what we already have? If we, it seems that there are a lot of people who are involved in radically rethinking what how the future of space would be, but what about for example the malls and the movie theaters we have, or what about the amphitheaters and the I don't know, railway stations in Bombay? How do you work with and how has your practice sort of coming from where you are, how has your practice in the past 20-25 days or a month and a half, how have you started to do things differently or think about things differently?
Okay, so I think one, of course, is there are two issues that I want to tackle. So one, of course, is this pandemic. I look at it a little bit more open-endedly, in the sense that there are two factors. So one is a kind of a fear factor, where people are reacting with a sense of fear, which is immediate. So if in your environment very close, people have been affected, so there's obviously a kind of a fear factor. Don't touch this, do this, do this. We tell our children this, etc. And one is a long-term kind of a sustainable thing. So the issue that comes in is we have to segregate fear factor versus kind of a long-term perspective on the whole thing. By long-term, I mean there are certain issues that a virus, now this is a particular kind of virus which is behaving in a certain way. And as Saurabh said, that scientists are still trying to figure out how this is going to behave and stuff like that. So there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction also. And I think we have to segregate the knee-jerk reaction, which is the fear factor, from certain long-term perspective. Is one thing. Obviously, the impact has been so significant all around the world that I think is going to affect how we design spaces, how we look at architecture. So one, of course, is that, I feel very strongly that there's going to be a far more interdisciplinary approach that architects will have to take. And I'm not sure that they've not been taking that, but I think sometimes it's a lip service to interdisciplinary approach. But I think a far more, comprehensive approach to interdisciplinary, like transport, health, wellness, space design will all have to get integrated quite significantly and stuff like that. Things like technology, touchless technology, etc., will need to come in to a great extent and stuff like that. So, we architects get very excited about touch feel and stuff like that. I think it is going to be more visual feel than touch feel kind of stuff and things like that. Also, I think that will the way we design change significantly? I don't think it'll change significantly. Obviously, I think this has had an impact on all of us, and we will all kind of evolve and react and work in certain ways to kind of react to this. Some of it may be purely pragmatic, as Saurabh has said, to do with management of large complexes like lift lobbies and stuff like that. Now, these are, it's like this 9/11, some security issues came up and we've all got used to it. Now, we don't even think about it. It becomes part of our muscle memory completely. So I think part of it is going to become part of our muscle memory in terms of how we kind of react to it. And there's going to be a new normal. But I think the way we design public spaces, your specific question and stuff like that, I think that is a big challenge. So, you talked about malls and cinemas, but I also talked about, things like markets and stuff like that in India, which are, very, very popular and stuff like that. And I think that those, we will need to rethink, space design. So densities will obviously need to come down to a significant extent in terms of, even in the long term. I think the scare is not going to go away very easily. So I think that this kind of, stations that you talked about, I think there is going to be. So currently what scenes that you see at stations is probably one extreme. What you see at airports, I've been seeing some videos of how Calcutta airport yesterday is trying to kind of open up and how they're going to do this distancing. It's absurd in the sense that it's really like living in some this thing. So I think it's obviously going to peter out. This is a knee-jerk reaction. But I think space design will need to change in terms of densities. Densities will definitely need to come down. Architects will definitely need to work innovative ways of, getting in kind of in large public spaces, natural elements without it being literal, kind of divide spaces or help people in terms of certain amount of social distancing and stuff like that. So I think nature of public spaces will change. Number two is also, I think people are going to question the largeness of public spaces and stuff like that. So while there might be, because also the needs will change. For example, if a mall is going to now get into a situation where they're going to limit the number of people coming in at any particular time through counting of people. So maybe the capacity of the space and some new norms will have to be worked out, that what is the density that we would like to achieve, within the public spaces of a mall. And obviously the tenants themselves will do it within the space itself and stuff like that. So I think what is going to happen is that density norms are going to change. And we go by certain density norm. We talk about a certain density of space and space design. So I think that's going to change significantly. And I think that we will need to respond to that in an architecturally sensitive manner. So I don't think it's really going to change. The problem is going to get redefined according to me.
Thank you very much, Architect Durant. It was so insightful. Before I go to Architect Alim Chandani, who loves to mix engineering, who loves to rather incorporate engineering and architecture and create beautiful structures, I would like to ask Architect Kusama Chitalwala. We can see, sir, a lot of stress everywhere and across the socio-economic strata. Hospitality industry is also in trouble. You have worked a lot in this thing. No one, we think, intends to enjoy the hospitality for some time now, and people, till the time that people are, expecting that they are safe. So the 2 points. A, what do you think some fundamental changes in hospitality sector from architect point of view, and also so much has already been created. What is going to happen? How it is going to address that also? So these are 2 points. Architect Hosama Chitalwala, to you, sir.
So I would like to address it in a little bit different manner. Let us all understand. I think so. Everybody, Surab, Kiranbhai, Pony, everybody is saying one thing. Let us all understand. Human beings are basically social people. It's a very if there was no social binding, we would have never been able to be able to grow to this extent. I'm meeting Sarab or Kiran Bhai at airport 6 months later, and if I don't give hug, that is going to be impossible. That is going to be impossible. So but yes, we have a new normal which has come because of this COVID-19 situation. But this new normal is going to lead us to certain new habits, and those habits have to be inculcated because COVID is going to be with us for lifetime now. It's going to be for not for our lifetime, but our future lifetime also for all our future generations. So, but having said so, there is going to be again a new normal to a new normal post-vaccine. So we are today at a very fluid stage where everybody is talking about COVID-19 situation, but we don't know what to do about it. So, and hospitality is one of the biggest hit which has been taken because of air travel not happening, no domestic travel happening, and as it's a public space. But fortunately for us, hygiene in hospitality were always on an upper level than any other public spaces. So there was a hygiene level which was already maintained in all the hospitality project. So there are two things which are very evident from this. There is an existing situation and there is going to be a future situation. So I'm working with most of the brand across the globe, and I realize that all of them are trying to address how to take care of the existing properties which are there in the COVID-19 situation, because all their parameters, all their SOPs which are getting written are for the existing. Nothing is for the future project because we don't know what is going to happen in future and how the vaccines are going to prove it. So what is that? According to me, fundamentally, there will be very little change in terms of architectural designs because what is required is required. But what is going to be a major change which is going to be brought is in the way the hotels are being operated. So the biggest challenge what we find now, if you go to a 5-star hotel, probably there are 5 people who are around you, greeting you when you come in. So the warmth is felt by that luxury is felt that you are getting very personalized attention. But with lesser and lesser of human intervention, you are going to face those challenges. So there would not be probably you will be standing 1.5 meters away from the reception desk. Your passport will be even taken care by something which is going to come in as a system. So a lot of that human intervention in that and the warmth of the social feeling is going to disappear from that hospitality. As far as budget hotels are concerned, 3-star and budget hotels, they are all at the doing similar things at this current point of time. But yes, technology will have to come in. We will have to look into technology because being a public space, hygiene is going to take a very, very important role in this. And we have to realize that the safety factor, comfort of safety and hygiene has to be given, that comfort level has to be brought in the guest. Otherwise, the guest is not going to stay with that. So that is the reason you will find a lot of brands tying up with the hygiene companies and trying to get it certified by those hygiene companies that this is what is it all about. So probably, but yes, there would be all those operation needs which are going to be there. For example, today when after those terrorist attacks, we got used to, as we said, we got used to metal detectors and baggage scanners and all those things. But if you look at it, it took a lot of time to get incorporated in design. So in all the retrofit, it took a lot of time. But today, what we are going to do is we are trying to prepare that all those operational needs like thermal checks, sanitization tunnels should get incorporated in incorporated in our design and experience ASAP. So those kind of things are going to be there. So probably you will get more of a, initially what you used to get as a welcome drink, probably you will get a sanitizer before you have a welcome drink. You will have somebody, probably in future the technology will help us. Even if the robot is not there, for luxury there would be a holograms greeting you and saying you welcome sir. So instead of a human being. So there are going to be a lot of changes. The specifications will have to change. The specification in terms of material, because how quickly you can create hygienes. Antimicrobial coatings are going to be a very big incoming factor for all the materials, because wherever there are going to be touch points, we will have to coat them with antimicrobial and antiviral coats, and those are existing currently. It will come in such a big way that for all those existing properties, we'll have to retrofit them. We'll have to retrofit with them. There is no other solution. But as far as public spaces, for example, a coffee shop is concerned, I don't see how are we going to maintain that social distancing, because the biggest challenge for us is if you look at smaller properties in Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, any of the metros where there are 30 rooms, 40 rooms properties, and all these have got the coffee shops. Of that, the capacity of that particular coffee shop is going to be 25, 30 people. What will you reduce over there? So probably brands will have to come with an operation formula where they can say that half of the guest is going to be served breakfast in their bedrooms, in their guest rooms, and half of them can come here. They will have to decide operationally and then come out with a formula. Or otherwise, simply put glass screens between two people and live with it, which we'll have to incorporate in design. But currently there is something which is what we are going on ahead on a pretext that the guest who is going to enter into a hotel is going to go through the hygiene, and once he is entered into a hotel, he is clean of COVID-19, and then wherever he moves around, he's free of COVID. That's what is the pretext on which we are moving on. But I don't think so. We have a very clear-cut formula on it, and I feel that we will have to change the habits. We will have to do retrofits in the existing environment and bring it back to a operational condition. But I'm very sure that the new post-vaccination, which would be very soon, the world is trying it, and probably they will achieve it. Today, Oxford University is saying that they have tried on monkeys and it's proving better. The results are there, positive results are there. So probably very soon we will have a new normal to the new normal, and that would change our complete thought process.
Very good. So thank you so much. It was very, very insightful. हम बाद में भी आर्किटेक्ट कुजामा से बात करते हैं. Am I audible? Yeah. So architect Kusama is also known for his wits, and he always believes in remaining cool. So we'll come back to your this cool bit, and because there's a lot of stress, and we need like you something coming up to make us also laugh and little bit particularly smile. Before I talk about the sustainability of public spaces a little more in detail, I would like to go to architect Aleem Chandani, and so there is a lot of talk coming up like a 20-minute city and hyper-local market. What is the international architect community's thinking, and what, according to you, forces us to think differently for local solutions here in urban India? Architect Aleem Chandani.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So, look, the way I look at it, with what's happened with COVID, one of the interesting things are that there's been a kind of an acceleration, of the future. In any case, there were certain things that were supposed to happen, and this kind of time that we've got to sit and reflect and made us kind of sit down and reflect, okay, as to how some of these issues, like the issues of sustainability, the environment, the issues of public health, etc., okay, have now become critical issues which have become central to the dialogue, okay, when we design. Now, if you really look at it, I would like to take a little journey from a house to a town, or from a town to a house. And I think one of the big things that we've learned is that, everybody said location, 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 right? And everybody talked about these inner cities and densities. But today it is really possible for me to be in Himachal Pradesh, okay, and practice my architecture, okay, out here. So it is really possible for a person to be globally connected, sitting in one location. And this aspect of putting high value on specific real estate and specific location may slightly reduce, because there's an awareness that we actually, people say that globalization was dying, but in a way, this pandemic has made people realize that we can actually be much more global than even we thought we were. And I think these are very important things, because there can be a redistribution, okay, of the value of land itself, which is like a generator for this whole thing. Now, if you're going to have a redistribution, right, you need to also have connectivity. So you are going to be having not only redistribution, but wherever you are redistributed, let's say if I'm sitting in Himachal Pradesh, I want to have, let's say, walk to work out there. I don't need to, don't want to have to share, traffic, go in a shared car or an Uber or something. Yes, people, Uber was doing very well. Shared transport was doing really well. There's going to be a little bit of rethinking about that, okay, as we move forward, because better than shared transport is actually walk to work. So why not have a kind of delocation of various facilities, homes, workplaces, etc., and also have an integration within that area itself based on the walk to work principle. I believe that a lot of people will think that this is actually viable today, and they'll still remain connected, because many of you architects, right, would have been working during these last periods on national and international projects and collaborating, and work must be moving on. It's not as good as it would be if you're at workplace, but yes, it's possible. And the issue, that is this possible, that particular barrier has been broken. What's interesting is that the new highway is actually an e-way, right? Okay, it's actually through bandwidth, and it's through that kind of connectivity. But the physical highways will also be important. For example, I don't know what will be the value in the future of large malls and large retail spaces. I think the idea of having a kind of a local center, which is the distribution center, and delivery from home, and e-delivery, like for drone-based delivery, etc., may be much more valued in the future. This was something that we thought happened only in the movies, or it's something that's some far thinking, but it will not happen normally. But no, I think this is something that I think could come, okay, much sooner than we'd anticipated. Another thing is, sitting at home, okay, you require certain health facilities. So you require some kind of desanitation facility. So when you come to the house, place to keep something in a desanitized zone, to wash things, okay, and clean things before you enter the house. This may be a kind of a specification at the level of the society, community, okay, that is at the apartment, at the flat, okay, etc., that are required. Home spaces may require workspaces integrated into them. A room must now have, let's say, a table or a desk for e-learning or for this. It's more like you may not do it now. Like Josema said, the vaccine will come, and then the nostalgia will drag us back. But then the next pandemic will come. The issue is that with a connected world like this, these disasters are possible, and the economic impact of these disasters are so huge. The GDP of India is contemplated to be just one. Okay, we expect a huge recession worldwide and globally. That I think this is going to be the new normal will really happen. It's not that back to the normal. There is going to be a complete new way of thinking and new way of doing. Okay, and it might come slowly in some places and maybe accelerated in other places, but it's going to happen. So I mean, things like markets, things like sports stadia, like we've done recently. So sad, we just did the largest cricket stadium in the world. Now I wonder if this cricket stadium will actually be used, and how it will be used, and what kind of distancing there will be. Airports, for example, actually airports might grow because in a typical plane, you'll be taking in 50% of the number of passengers, right? So therefore, if you really want the number of passengers to move in the future, right, and I think there will still be, reasonable air traffic, what will happen is that the runway will be having to accommodate more flights to accommodate the same load. So therefore, actually airports might need to grow, although they'll have a lesser density at the same time. So these issues, I think, of density, of communication, for example, logistics, going to be a very important player, in the future, and building up very good logistics infrastructure will be key. I mean, the logistics haven't been bad even in a city like Mumbai when we had this problem. Also, we got to solve problems like, our slums. We've got to find solutions. It's inhumane that we did not manage to tackle Dharavi till today. So I can go on, but what I wanted to say was it's changed the way we work and it's going to change the way we live. But it's not a change for the sake of change. It's a change because we want to be in a better world together. And I think issues like sustainability, environment, connectivity, and like Hosem said, you can't be without people. You need to eventually touch, you need to feel. We are social beings. So we are going to find ways to work all that out. I don't have all solutions. I'm not a soothsayer or a scientist, but I think that as an architect, I can say we will innovate, and innovation will be key because there'll be so much AI in our business, so much mechanization of construction and architecture itself, that we will find that a design, okay, will be more based on innovation, right? And of course process, more based on innovation than anything else. And I agree with Kiran that it's going to require a tremendous amount of integration and cross-discipline working. The architect will not be working just on architecture, but he'll have to work across in a multidisciplinary manner and bring in feedback from various fields. Anyway, architects are supposed to do that, so nothing new. Well, I can go on. Better we ask some other people some questions.
Thank you very much. It was really very insightful. With a lot of things depends on how we live, and as you also mentioned, Dr. Puni also mentioned, and everybody perhaps mentioned, maybe the solution lies from both the ends: A, from the design side, and B, from the management of the places. And as Architect Kusama was saying, that it's not a permanent thing that social distancing is going to continue. It reminds me that we have someone from the product making side, from the manufacturing side. We have Mr. Sarat Chandak, who is CEO and ED of H&R Johnson India, which is into tiles, which is into sanitary, which is into bath fittings, engineered marble and all. And somebody mentioned about this antimicrobial, all sort of surfaces, and surfaces are an important part. And I think his products are going in quite a few places. So Mr. Sarat, over to you. You would like to add anything on this a new phenomena which is focused on having antimicrobial sort of products and something more, perhaps, Mr. Sarat?
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you and the audience here. And as I can hear and gather a lot of feedback from the eminent panelists who have been designing the wonderful spaces around and solving the issues. So as a product manufacturer, we have been treating COVID-19 not anything different than what you have laid out. And we, in all fairness, we feel that this is going to stay for long. So obviously we need to embrace this with all kind of precautions and all kind of cautious movements, what we need to do for the business to run. So as a company, we have been for last 6 decades have been thriving on innovations and R&D expertise. And we have in the industry, we have the only one manufacturer who are into the antimicrobial compound, which applications is diverse, starting from any surface or getting into a paints, like recently the Asian Paint has launched it. That's a antimicrobial compound are being supplied by us. So I heard about all the changes which is likely to be happening around, and it gives me another thought that is it that it is this is a kind of a over the 100 years we face this kind of pandemic again. So is it because of the way we have used or misused the surrounding world that it has led to this kind of pandemic? Maybe the answer is yes or no. and there could be always a divided opinion onto that. And at the same time, we as a responsible company, we believe to get into the R&D mode to solve those problems throughout. And we just don't believe that aesthetics is going to be solving all those issues. We try to bring onto the table about more of the functionality, what you laid out, and the likely changes which is this COVID-19 is in due course is going to teach us, and we are going to evolve out of those and solving every day. We take the route of eminent panelists like you and to try to get into a collaborative mode, try to get into a co-creation mode to understand all the, because you are the most important point in the entire value system of this designing aspect, where the feedback and the issues and problems can be identified in true sense and can be taken back to the shop floor and can be addressed. So we thoroughly believe into those R&D experts, and our laboratory is like near about now 16, 17 years old, nurturing various aspects of ceramics into this, not only restricted to sanitary ware or tiles. We have got into ceramic membrane. So ceramic membrane is not here to solve only the problem of any kind of separations of effluent treatment. So it could be STP, it could be gray water treatment, it could be oil and water separations, it could be into food processing, it could be water filtration as well. So all this aspect is on the basis of feedback what we receive. And now hearing all of you about how the things are going to be looking forward to, it's quite fluid, as you mentioned, it's quite fluid, and it's very unpredictable today to decide a course, and we have to live with and try to figure out things going forward. We would honestly look forward for all kind of those problems area which is going to come apart from antimicrobial, apart from being socially responsible, trying to create everything local here, trying to create anything surrounding with local material to be decarbonating everything or creating a less carbon footprint onto the areas and space we design. So we sincerely look forward for more and more such kind of feedback sessions from you all to understand the gravity of problems we are going to face. And definitely we believe into one strong point is this is not a pandemic for here to the vaccine can solve. As architect Raveen mentioned, it's going to be another pandemic maybe going forward. So so we need to be prepared for those kind of world, and we need to those kind of challenges going forward, and we need to prepare for to face those things, and also create a differentiator. By this generation only can create the differentiator for next generation to come. And whether it is less bigger public spaces or bigger lobbies, or settling through technology, settling through antimicrobial compound, or solving issues through various other R&D efforts, I think that's the way forward. And it's more about, as a manufacturer, we should be more open to listening to those functionality challenges which is a customer at large is going to face, society at large we are going to face, or we hope to be, or we predict to be facing those challenges, and trying to find out through innovations. This is the challenging time, will actually the innovations is the only key and answer, and we can actually co-create, collaborate with you all to take this journey onwards and try to solve the problems collectively. That's what I would feel. I think as a brand, we will be responsible enough to bring this on table into India by leaving about 6 decades and facing this pandemic for the first time of this large scale. So here we go, that we look forward for all the more insight, architect Rituraj and Dinesh, to collaborate those feedbacks from more and more such eminent panelists. And I respect all of your feedback. Thank you so much for enlightening how things look forward to.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sarath. Now I'm tempted to move to Mr. Praja Rao, because this lockdown has really created a new sort of situation where I am being blamed कि ये बोला था interior में ये क्यों नहीं कराया और वो क्यों नहीं कराया. I think we all might be struggling at our own. But before I go to her, and I had a chance to talk to her on this some time back, I would like to once again take the question of maintaining and sustaining the large and the lavish spaces once more with the forum, and I would like the young architect Nishan Gupta to open it up, and then anybody can take up on this. the lavishness and the largeness of the spaces and their relevance today? What is going forward? Architect Nishant.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I think it's become very serious. It's like a lecture you have signed in a college and you can't, really get out of the class. So, but coming back to, what the discussion has been happening, I think Kozan Bhai and Kiran Bhai can still compromise on their hug. We are really worried about our beloved Prime Minister, and he's traveling, I think, hugging all the world leaders. I think he's in more trouble, and and coming to think of what Abhin is saying about his largest stadium, I'm sure with the lacks of seats that stadium has got, even if people have to sit on alternate seats, I still think it's one of the biggest. So Abhin, I think you're also well off. So don't worry about how the stadium is going to operate. Now, we human beings are, we have that biggest, our advantage is we have that survival skill. And now with that survival skill, I think we had been over the centuries been able to overcome, the Great Depression, the plague, whatnot, 9/11, and we have sort of overcome with, flying colors. I mean, it's a disrupt for a time, and that's a time when God tells you that okay, this is not originally yours. This is how I created the world, and He interrupts. He brings in something, or we do something like a world war or 9/11. So I think it's some of the disruption that sort of comes over, after one or few decades. And I think, like, when the Titanic sank, people did not stop sailing, or people did not stop being on board for cruises. So it's just that I think the 9/11 has been now overused, but I would take the example of Titanic. So we worked with technology. We had enough number of lifeboats, and we worked around it. And I think everyone's happily going for these cruises. So now coming back to, I think, the technology part, wherein one of the gentlemen was talking about hotel design, and how this time there are people who are thinking about what is the way forward. So similarly, like Marriott has taken up on themselves, and they are making barcode. There will be not even a robot at the entry, and then you just go through, and you just go to your room wherein your locks are changed, wherein you just scan your barcode, get into the room, get out, pay everyone through that barcode. So I think the design is sort of going from what in 1920s a lock and key used to be there, to a sensor, a key card came in, and now what a barcode would do. I think so we are evolving. Still, the door stays to be the same. So it's just that how we are sort of, decongesting our way of, working. Now, we've been talking a lot about social spaces. We have been talking a lot about malls, how the malls would operate, and how would the theaters work. I think immediately right now, for a couple of months, till things improve, even when we get out of it, I don't think many people would really have the money to go to malls. They'll be sort of, in the longer term, I'm sure. But I think this is something right now. Like I said, we are, we have that survival skill, and we'll work around it and get to it. Now, when it comes to design and sustainability, I think we have two bigger viruses in our system, and one is a big virus of bad policies, and second is a virus of the so-called activists, especially in Mumbai. So even if as designers I'm capable to deliver something that would work for this given pandemic, I'm willing to make a house that would sort of enable us to work from home, have a nice openness, have ventilation. At the same time, if my policies don't favor me, I think we won't be able to do anything. And let's say there's a change in policy, then we have the activists saying that, why is it so? Why is being done like this, or what is being done like that? So while you're doing housing, you have to pay such big premiums on the common areas. So I think there has to be a overhaul. This time has to be used very sensibly to sort of work around those policies and get to something which is more sustainable not just environmentally, but also in terms of economics. Now, like a lot of people are saying that, they would want to go back to their hometown and they would want to live in a standalone house. But I think, we are like others said, we are social creatures. So we need to be in a urban environment. We need people, we need the whole jargon of, everybody, the community living. We are so, our lives are so full of it. So, and secondly, we have to think that, when we sort of start having those standalone houses, what is the kind of sustainability, message that we would give? Because that means that we are gobbling up the farmlands, we are just spreading horizontally and we are not going vertically. So I think this should not be like, again, a knee-jerk reaction of, okay, this is the problem, and immediately I sort of, maybe I have to eventually, but I think we have to sort of, again, have good policies that sort of would enable little clusters versus, just spreading out, entirely in all directions. And coming to the last part, what you asked me about the office design sustainability. I think again, we were designing initially in 60s, 70s used to be 150 square feet. A person came down to 120 to 90 to, it has gone down to 65 now with the co-working spaces and the IT and everything. And now we are again talking about going back to 150 square feet. So I'm not sure that, probably we should be doing that right now. But given the offices have an open floor plate, and I think it's matter of the way we do the fit outs. But eventually we have to understand that everybody, no matter what the kind of fit out is done, they come through that single elevator, and the management of that elevator and the transportation and the way the people are transported from one point to that, through that bottleneck to their desk. I think that is more important. And I think with technology and design, we should be able to, address that. That would be
thank you. Thank you, Nishan. The question, again, I'll be posing it. What does this lavishness means in post-COVID period? But before that, as I said, I invite Supraja Rao to share her tips, her experience, and her focus on work from home that we all are going through. Ms. Supraja Rao, please.
Thanks, Mr. Vyas. Thanks for having me over. So I'm going to skip talking about the general stuff that most people have spoken in the larger picture. Thankfully, I can see I'm going to focus on interior design. Most people have talked about other places. So specifically on what this has taught us going forward, residential design, some practices could change. In current projects, our clients are already talking. Like if you were bringing stuff into the house, now it's not coming in through the main door. It's coming in through another door. It's getting all washed, cleansed, and then coming inside. So a client of mine actually called and said, look, I want a larger platform near my kitchen door so everything enters from there. So, but this is an immediate reaction to the problem. The response will come later, but maybe this will just become a practice. And someone was talking about how we need to, probably wash our feet when we enter. Now, this used to be there back in the day when hygiene levels were poor and people they removed their footwear, washed their feet, washed their hands, and then only entered the house. In my entire career of about 2.5 decades plus, I've only had one client who's asked for something like this in a gated community villa, where his wife is very particular that anybody who enters has to wash their feet before they enter the house. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these practices, which were practiced in the past and which were for just pure hygiene. And Abhi, if you see any old movie or any, somebody will walk in and say, main muh hath dho ke aa jata hu, then chai piyunga. Right? Now we don't. We just directly we go in our fancy branded shoes and we enter the house in the same shoes and sit and start having a cup of tea. I think some of these will be questioned, if not as a reaction, as a response also going forward. As far as the work from home question you've asked me, and I will address it specifically from a very women point of view, because and I heard Cosima interview Sonali yesterday and talking about how women manage, whatever work you do outside, you still come home and run the house before and after. So working from home is a double-edged sword for women. It can be a blessing on certain days when you have issues at home and you have to deal with them while still manage your work or a meeting. on days your kid is unwell, doesn't have help at home, etc., etc., if you could manage some work from home. But it's also a great blessing when women step out of the house for those many hours, forget about their domestic chores problem, they just express themselves, they're happy being who they are, and then get back to work. So I think if it can be used, on a need basis, I always keep thinking, if someone's got teenager kids at home, 2 kids, and you've had a homestay for about 60 days, you must be pulling your hair as both parents, we're getting into arguments. Fortunately for us, we're at a slightly later stage where our child's grown up and is living in another part of the world. So we're living very, very without having any arguments. So I think work from home will work for women at different stages on different days. Yeah, it's going to be great. And on the corona thing, I personally believe that I call my life as a trip to Earth. Are we really leaving? We enter Earth at a certain stage. When we leave, are we leaving it really the way we got it as? We're not. That's a simple answer. And I hope this, what I call this pause, is just to reflect upon and see, are we really, is this was why we came to the earth? I mean, I think economic progress, growth, development have taken over priority in everything in this journey of ours, which I think is shouldn't be given so much importance. It's getting a little spiritual and philosophical maybe, but I really think this is what needs to be thought about in this, the beauty of the earth is it can just wipe us all like that. And every time something happens as a human thing, like if there is a earthquake, and then as human beings, we want to up the game and say, okay, the next building will be to a 6.0 just scale, so the building would fall. And so it's like almost like we are fighting with our competition with nature itself. There is a tsunami, and then you say, okay, next time we build like this. Every time it is. But I think it's time we pause and reflect and say, what is the actual problem? And it's just upping our game of solution. Thank you, Vas. That's all I have to say.
This was quite insightful, and I like the particular statement. Okay, sometimes it is good to work from home when you have issues on some day, but not every day that we men are there as an issue. But that's a realization also. Moving forward, there are a lot of questions from the audience also, and one of the questions, I don't know who would like to take. Is there any expectation, very strong expectation that something building code will change, national building code will change? So I think it is directed to Architect Kiran, sir, and Architect Sohrab. What NBC code changes we are expecting, or can we expect?
So I'm not sure whether codes will change, but I think architects will have to respond to this kind of reality in a different way. So, I think, I honestly feel that, as you're aware, NBC codes have just recently been changed, and there's a new set of NBC codes which are operational. Obviously, they don't deal with these kinds of issues and stuff like that. And again, as I said earlier, I don't think that just because of this pandemic, because again, there are two issues here. One is the fear factor, which is a kind of a knee-jerk initial reaction, and one is a kind of a long-term kind of an issue. I don't expect codes to change very soon. I think people have bigger problems to deal with. So I don't think codes are likely to change in the near future. But I think as architects, I think we will have to change our way of thinking in terms of how spaces are designed. And it may not be code driven. For example, as Nishant was saying that, yes, there are issues in a place like Mumbai where codes are kind of, driven by, minimizing common areas and common spaces. And obviously what this pandemic has taught us is exactly the opposite, that you need to be more liberal about it. Now, how do you really come to terms with it? The code may still say something, but I think developers or responsible developers and clients will have to change their ways of looking at it. Maybe they will look at issues where they will not necessarily go by the bare, lowest common kind of, multiple, and look at issues in a kind of a bigger light. So I think all of us are more enlightened, are more enlightened by this. So I think the question specifically is that I don't think codes will change. But we will have to change. I don't think we can rely on codes to change this. And I think codes just give a general kind of a direction. And I don't think we should rely that codes will change in the future and then we will start responding to it. I don't think so. So I think waiting for the codes to change is a pipe dream, I think.
Okay, thank you, sir. Akrit, Sohrab, you would like to add anything on this, please?
Yeah, I tend to partly agree with Kiran that I don't think the codes will really change. I think where the change is going to come about really are in some of these rating systems of ours. So when we talk of leads, we talk of Griha, we talk of wellness. I think if, as I said, if this is here to stay, I think these bodies will definitely recognize that we need to give more importance to some of these issues. One of the things that I don't think we've touched on so far in this discussion are our mechanical systems, So, the air conditioning design, I think we could see some pretty significant changes in some of those areas. So, as Kiran said, responsible developers will really, irrespective of what the code says, I think they will try and make their buildings more safer for the people that are inhabiting those buildings. And it may not be legislation driven, but I think it will be really client driven. And, those buildings will then begin to attract the better customers. I don't want, I hope that we don't have one day where we actually have to say that our project is COVID compliant, we talk of a lot of other compliances, but I hope we don't really get to that day. But as I said, I think responsible developers and the public at large will ensure that we do start designing and building safer buildings, for the community that is using them. One last thing, which we didn't touch upon also was that, I think the construction, as architects, we deal with our job sites all the day, every day. And I think we are going to see some huge changes over there. I think there is going to be a far larger degree of mechanization. I think we'll see a lot more of precasting and those sort of technologies, which then rely more on, as I said, mechanical means rather than on labor. And I think actually going forward, that is also a good thing for the industry. I think it'll get in a more skilled workforce and it'll also improve the quality of our projects.
Very well said, very insightful, sir. Before I move to Architect Aleem Chandani and in the second round, Dr. Pune also, this question is specific to Architect Kusama. As I said, we have heard you have been saying one should always be cool. And believe me, this is never so much needed. Right now, we all are needing it. I also learned that when you are young, and if someone asked you, what would you like to become? Bade hoke kya banoge? To aapka jawab hota tha, Gabbar Singh. What was that coolness, Architect Kusama? Would you like to share this thing with us, please, Architect Kusama?
Sorry, I think so. You guys picked up from one of my Pecha Kucha presentation I gave some time back. Yeah, I was probably 10 years old, and I really fascinated that character of Gabbar Singh. I felt that it was a very cool character as such in my childhood. But if you look at in real sense, I sometimes when I think about it, there are so many hidden messages when you look with a different perspective altogether. Mm-hmm. I'm very used to looking at glass half filled and rather than glass half empty. I'm pretty used to that particular philosophy. So when I see a lot of things, I try and take learnings from it, and I think so that gives me a lot of positive vibration and positive thinking as such. So I feel today also I feel that a lot of people across. I would just set a simple example. We all were struggling to get the data from the office. So I personally, I would say nobody thought, we were all debating. We had a couple of Zoom calls, everything. Nobody, it struck to nobody for first 2 days. Everybody was saying, where is the data? And I called up my peon. तो बच्चा डेटा लेने का है, तू कैसे पेन ड्राइव में लेगा, क्या लेगा? Sir, why are you worried? I'll go to office. He stays very close to my office. He says, I'll open up the office and I'll give you everybody on a team viewer. A peon could think about it. Probably sometimes. So you got to be very sure what you are, how positively you take. You learn from all your people who are around you. So being positive and being appreciative, as I think so, it gives us a lot of positive energy. Today also, I feel that we are probably, this is तूफान के आने के पहले की शांति है अभी. हम लोग सब ये शांति एंजॉय कर लो. जिस दिन खुलेगा ये तूफान खुलेगा उस दिन हमको पता नहीं है कितना, what all we'll have to work for. And probably we'll have to give extra hours which are lost today. Probably we'll have to incorporate those hours and make more out of it. Make more out of it. I'm dead sure about it. It will be a good positive thing. Yes, it's not going to happen immediately as soon as we open up. We have to see that struggle period. But I think so we'll someday or other we'll look at it. I feel that people all the people say, of all the people, everybody in hospitality industry is bleeding. Yes, they are bleeding. But the industry, the way it has gone down, it will rise up again because every investor, every owners are going to put extra energy into it. Extra energies into it to bring it to the positive vibration. Because we are all together and we all will have to put in that energy and bring it the best out of it.
So well said. So well said, sir. And it's true, like in one of the discussion, our managing director was telling us, Mr. Jaguar, कि okay, ये मान के चलो कि जब परेशान हो कि आप 5 साल पीछे आ गए या 10 साल पीछे आ गए. But we were happy. We grew even in those conditions. Our income could have been lesser, our salaries could have been lesser, our overall profitability could have been lesser. But now we know that it will not take 5 years before we go very, very fast. So that's very important, and you repeated it. I would like to call upon Architect Alim Chandani once again about the possibilities and about the synthesis of this engineering and architecture in the emerging environment, and then perhaps some questions, and then we'll wrap up. Architect Alim Chandani, please.
So, I'd like to start off from where Saurabh left off, the construction site and the changes that are going to take place in construction and how they're going to impact our business and society as a whole. So certainly automation in construction, which is on the anvil, it's already happening. For example, the coastal road in Mumbai is being constructed largely by TBMs. All the tunneling and all is being done while all COVID was going on. The tunneling and all these activities were also on. There's a lot of robotics already in construction and a lot of prefabrication already. And the big thing in the minds of all the big contractors today is that how they can mechanize construction to the maximum. They're going to find it difficult to get labor, and they've always had a problem with skilled labor. So that's going to be a challenge. The issue that comes out of this is not just that the designers and architects, etc., will need to, automate their own businesses to be in tandem with the kind of BIM related, 3D printing related, prefabrication related construction, which we'll need to do. We will do it. But the second aspect, which is very important, is that this is going to create a huge social problem, a lot of joblessness, right? And we need to understand how to attend to that. And when it comes to that, one of the issues that we want to look at is education. While e-learning, etc., are kind of now possible, and so you don't need large physical campuses, you still will need to get, skilling centers. I think the government of India is already aware of that, and they're trying to set up these kind of skilling centers because we need people to be useful, to be working, or it lead to all kinds of issues, right? For example, one of the big worries in Mumbai was that Arthur Road Jail, for example, right, there's infection there. What's going to happen? They're going to have a lot of crime. They're going to have congestion. Again, a potential place where you can have difficulty. In fact, somebody said at the beginning of this that we've been imprisoned at home. That might even become a reality, in the future, because with the kind of cyber surveillance that is actually a part of this, part of this learning, and it's happening in Wuhan in China. You can move out only if you're well. You have Arogya Setu here, where there's a debate going on, about cyber surveillance. So it's actually, whether it's positive or negative, I don't know. I don't want to put a negative aspect to it, but we got to put We got to move positively, as everyone said here. But it is going to be, the new normal as far as all these things are there. I'd like to also talk a little bit about medicine. And I think medicine as a profession and the importance of both science and medicine, right, has been felt. We need more doctors. We need more medical care. Medical care also, we've had telemedicine now, reasonably successful, telemedicine. Medical outreach to villages, towns, places, at different corners of the world. The WHO says Africa is going to get tremendously impacted by this because they don't have even the basic medical facilities in tier 2 and tier 3 destinations. So there's going to be a lot of focus rather than just the urban centers, which also require, of course, a lot of medical augmentation. Look at Mumbai, but also in these tier 2 and tier 3 towns where they need to create this kind of medical network. So there will probably be telemedicine plus some kind of a local robotic AI diagnostic facility, then with some local medical facility, and then a hub facility. So kind of a medical network itself would need to be established. So I think there are a lot of new possibilities, exciting possibilities, and disruption always creates potential for change, innovation, and we will all adapt. We'll all make new things happen, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. It was really very, very interesting, this thing. Before I move on to the open round, I would request Architect Ruturaj.
I'm not sure what I have to do.
Go ahead and ask yourself a question, I guess. Ask the take an audience question, because I think we've been an hour.
I think no. I have something. I have something to. One of the conversations that in our office internally we have been having since some time is the question of when you go to, let's say, suburban, let's say for Bangalore it's the Nandi Hills, or if for Bombay it's Alibag. When you go to these places and you realize that there are this extremely large single family houses. I mean, it's kind of it's a phenomenon that we have seen in the past 20 years, how these houses have become sort of a norm, second homes, most of them, and they seem to be, especially in the context of the current situation, we feel that they seem to be excessive, let's say, and also they kind of raise the question of how what is appropriate, what kind of even if you see it from good, in a good lifestyle point of view, how do these spaces that we are guilty of designing in the last 2 decades are now going to change? Are we still going to design this sort of this whole idea of lifestyle and luxury that has taken over the conversation about design in the last 10 years? How will this discussion change, and how will we think of the idea of sustainability, or what is sustainable or what is appropriate after in the context of what we have seen, especially the kind of social disparity we have seen between who are the privileged people like us, and the people who don't have the privilege of even having a home. So that's the kind of I mean, I thought that I'll pose this question because it has been kind of bothering us as an office internally.
Can I take that, Ruturaj?
Yeah, sure.
Kiran here. So, we've been giving this a thought even before this COVID come up. And the big question that you ask is, I think second homes are going to remain, and people have the money, have the right to spend on it. That's fine. I'm not here to make any kind of social commentary on it. But I think I want to address this whole issue of the role of architects in this kind of, when there's social disparity. And, actually 2 or 3 years ago, we as a firm took a call to actually say that, you know, we must do some pro bono work every year to ensure that, you know, good architecture, sensible architecture reaches, you know, down the line, you know, to the, so there's the whole idea that, you know, good spaces, you know, so I think more and more architects, I very really strongly feel it's a trend that we do not have. But I think that if a lot of architects get together in the sense that really either do collaboratively or individually, but, you know, we've decided that a certain amount of time every year we will spend. So we've decided that we will do 2 pro bono projects every year. And you know, these pro bono projects are done not at cost, they're done absolutely free. So it's actually you're giving time. So sometimes, you know, you say, okay, I'll donate money. But, you know, honestly speaking, when we started working for an organization, you know, I don't think, let me be honest with you, a lot of good organizations, well-run organizations, they don't have shortage of funds. Let me be with CSR and stuff like that. They actually don't have shortage of funds. They have actually, they lack technical expertise. They want people to come forward and work, you know, with them, for them, etc., etc. So I think I've realized that that is a dying need, you know, really desperate need. And their architects, other professionals also, I'm just saying as architects, because we've done it over the last 3 years. So we do 2 projects a year pro bono. And I think I would encourage more and more architectural firms to do it. Do projects that you think you can contribute architecturally to. It's not just a question of, you know, going and building some houses or doing something physically, because, you know, I think we bring a certain amount of intellectual kind of ability into the way we think spaces. And this is one way by which, you know, this kind of social discrimination between haves and have-nots and stuff like that, you know, I think, you know, can be, you know, as architects, I think we have a role to play, and something that we can contribute to is what I would say. That's one thing that we should all focus in on strongly.
Thank you. Dr. Poni?
Yeah.
I completely
Thanks,
agree
Kiran, for that, you know, because
sorry.
Go ahead, Poni.
No, just
please
go ahead.
ahead.
I completely agree with Kiran that it's important to do pro bono work. Oscar and I have been working on many projects, more than sometimes 4 or 5 a year, to look into needs of, you know, the lesser privileged. But I would also agree with him that, you know, the business of wanting luxury, human beings and people having money, wanting luxury, that's not going to change. But the fact that as architects, we have to be extremely social minded, and the best way to do it is pro bono. Completely agree with that.
I mean, one thought that you know, one thought that has been consistent. I mean, coming from, from what Kiran said and what you said, is that in situations like this, you realize that certain professions, like the medical profession, and even the garbage collection, the entire sort of you know, ecosystem of collecting and moving garbage around in these times, the law enforcement, these are sort of critical, let's say, essential services, as they say. How do we you know, somehow make our service essential is what is bothering us these days. You know, how can we create create an idea that design is also an essential service? I mean, if somebody wants to take it up or react to that.
I can take it, but I have a version to it. I don't know when you mean by an essential service is when there is a lockdown like this, whether we need to be still working, or as a profession, have we made an impact that we are a very essential service? I'd like to.
Yes, that's the second bit here. Yeah.
I'd like to make I think, and I said this before, roti, kapda, and makan are the most important 3 things for someone's journey. And we are part of that journey of making the makan, I mean, today the most important thing for people is their house, and that is their space, that is their world. And so I think in that sense, we're in a profession, we're not in a frivolous profession from any angle, you know, even if it's interior design and you're making a place comfortable, you're making it to deliver a certain emotional quotient in times like these and every day. So I definitely think we're in our profession is service oriented, for sure.
Interesting.
And coming to a question
Anyone
on,
else would
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll just
no, go ahead.
I just want to add one small thing to what Supraja said about roti, kapda, and makan. So, one thing that has been kind of, bothering me to some extent for some time is, if you look at the 50s and the 60s, when India and the post-independence era, if you notice, generally speaking, the government was one of the kind of primary providers of housing. And over the years, what has happened is that consciously, and it's an evolving thing that the government is absolved itself of the response of providing housing. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think so what has happened is that who kind of filled up that shoes? And honestly, the private developer has filled those shoes. Now, that is not necessarily the case in some other countries like Singapore, where there is the housing board, the Singapore Housing Board and stuff like that, and stuff like that. So I think what has happened is that here, because of a lacunae in terms of this thing, the developer is coming, and yes, there are all kinds of developers. Some are, probably going after profit. Some are doing better work. Some are doing not lesser but better work. I think the problem really is that the government absolving itself of any kind of provision of housing, I think is a challenge. So either developers and architects will have to stand up and say that we are going to be harbingers of quality, of this is what is really needed, and not just pander on profit, not pander on profit alone and stuff like that. And that is something that cohesively people will have to get together and do, in absence of the government doing it. Because the government, when they do social housing, their objective is very different. When a developer does housing, his objective is very, 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 very different. And I think somewhere, I think my problem is that, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. And I think that twain has to come together, because I think, I think policies, so government has policies to say that if you are doing middle income housing or housing below a certain kind of square footage, we will give you incentive. That's their goal, incentive. And that incentive is then that leads to greed, because it says that, okay, I will do it. But they're not. So I think the government has to go a little beyond that. And I think some in between space where a developer and the government or the authorities have to come together to a rational thing. So yes, the developer has to make profit. I don't think that nobody wants to do it for charity. I think we are lacking that. I think we've got two ends of the spectrum, and I think we are lacking that in between. And I think today, bulk of the housing, just look at percentages. One is there's a very small component of housing being done by industry, where they do their own housing and stuff like that. Small component, very, very small component, where industries do housing for townships, which was earlier apparent in the 60s and the 70s and stuff like that. That time they used to do it because, and now policies have changed, taxation has changed. Now suddenly, if industry does their own housing, I think the way it's kind of charged on to the customer. Today, a customer or today an employee wants to own his own house. So obviously the developer has come into play. I think industry, developers and the government need to come together to provide a more mature social housing, which is currently not there.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Thanks, Kiran. Yeah, that's that. Mr. Vyas, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah. I mean, so, it's a little philosophical. People are migrating to cities, and it has been happening since ages. I mean to say, in want of infrastructure and in villages and a lot of other economic activities. So better suvidhaएं hai, better healthcare hai, everything that brings people in the city. Then the same people are deprived of the same thing. No clean water for a portion of population, no health services, and we can see how people are flooding. So ultimately, then we don't have land also. So whatever we say, but maybe the going vertical seems to be the only solution. But what happens to overall health of the society? Is there any kind of model? Of course, it is not related just to COVID, but yes, COVID has given us a break to rethink about it, about the hyperlocal market which used to happen, about how we can ensure the clean water to everyone, how the health services are accessible to everyone. My question will be to three people: architect Sohrab, architect Alim Chandani, and as well as architect Kozama. Architect Sohrab, first to start with you, what exactly is the real good model for our society, for Indian cities? Architect Sohrab.
So I'm going to actually answer your question a little differently, and I'll start by saying that maybe there's a silver lining to all this also. When my son came back, he was studying, and he came back about 2 months ago. And you know what he told me, and that sort of still stayed in my mind. He said that, Dad, one day we're all going to get this. So actually, what you need to concentrate on, yes, you should do whatever you can in terms of social distancing and things. But he said the more important thing is that I think we need to relook at our own lifestyles, And I think wherever you are in society, I think that's an important thing today. I think, and these 2 months actually have given us a very good opportunity to actually lead far more regimented and in that sense, I would say healthier lives than we were leading. So I think one of the things that this whole sort of pandemic has taught us is that I think we need to focus on how can we really, make ourselves healthier. What do we need to do? And then let this percolate down to, everybody. Like we live in a sort of gated community. So it's not only, I'm not only talking about the people who sort of own these apartments, but even the staff, even the people who are, sort of servicing this whole community are also leading healthier lives. They're also, and I think they've become aware of these things to a far greater degree. So I think awareness, I think, is going to be a very important thing. And, how we can really, make our own bodies really resist some of these attacks that will happen in the future also. And I think that is one way of looking at this whole problem.
Architect Aleem Chandani would like to take it and add something from your side. Am I audible? And I think we lost signal. So Architect Kusama, आपकी ज़रूरत है ये आगे का शहर कैसे बनाएं हम और क्या चाहिए जो लेने के लिए आ रहा है आदमी वही नहीं मिल रहा है. I mean to say, even if we see Mumbai, half of the population is into slums, and then what we are facing in and what kind of social distancing, क्या possible है, क्या possible नहीं है, basic hygiene कहाँ है, पानी कहाँ है. What kind of model for future cities you would like to?
So Vyasji, the challenges is not because how to plan that. The basic challenge is who are the people who are coming to cities? कौन आ रहा है? हमारे rural area से आ रहे हैं. उनको जो फार्मिंग लैंड है वो अपनी ऐसी बंजर छोड़ के हमारे वहाँ आ रहे हैं only to get some money, make their livelihoods. So if we can create some resources over there, they will not come. अभी आप ये देखिएगा, आज पूरा मीडिया, हम सब लोग बोल रहे हैं कि जितने भी इमिग्रेंट्स यहाँ से गए हैं शहरों में से, वो सब 5 महीने नहीं आने वाले, सब आएंगे दिवाली बाद. क्यों दिवाली बाद आने वाले हैं? आप सोचिए, आज उनको they are worried about their life and situation. They want to be with their family. There are a lot of people who feel that आज गांव के अंदर एक फार्मर है वो कैसे ट्रीट करता है. अगर कोई गेहूं उगाता है, कोई चावल उगाता है और कोई दाल उगाता है तो वो लोग बार्टर कर लेते हैं. उनका साल भर का दाल चावल रोटी सब्जी ये हो जाती है घर की खेतियों से. उनको एक्स्ट्रा मनी वो चाहिए क्योंकि उनके पास वो नहीं है लग्जरी और वो देखते हैं. सो उनको वो शहरों की तरफ आकर्षित होते हैं. अगर सैटेलाइट सिटीज बनाते रहे और उसका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बराबर बनाएंगे तो ये लोग भी नहीं आएंगे. इनको कोई अपना गांव, किसी को भी अपना घर छोड़ के यहाँ शहर में आके कोई स्लम में रहने का कोई शौक नहीं होएगा. लेकिन हमारी जो प्लानिंग की व्यवस्था है वो व्यवस्था को हमको सही बनाना बहुत जरूरी है. अगर वो बना लेंगे तो all of us will live much more better and peaceful this thing. Yet there will be some people who will come in. आज हर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट बोल रही है कि भैया हम पैसे नहीं लेंगे, उसके लिए हम किसी को अलाउ नहीं करेंगे, हम पैसे देंगे 50% देंगे, सेंट्रल से मांग रहे हैं. So there is a situation. We could ये सिचुएशन को हैंडल करने का अलग तरीके से और उसको बड़ी फोरसाइटिंग से ले जाना पड़ेगा. हम ये एक साल में या हम लॉकडाउन खुलने के बाद में ये रिजॉल्व होने वाला नहीं है. इट्स अ वेरी बिग फ्यूचरिस्टिक इशू. And this is not something which happens only in India, but it happens all across the globe. So why do people get attracted to the larger metropolitan cities? There are reasons for it. So we need to create, but yet there are so much of infrastructure which is created there. There is a complete farming culture, rural industries, which will have to create a network and create systems which will help them make little more money, and they should be at least get at least 50% of what they were getting it here. आज हम नहीं बोल रहे कि कोई गुची और अरमानी की ब्रांड वहां चली जाए, लेकिन उसको जो शर्ट चाहिए या ट्राउजर चाहिए तो he or she should be able to buy that over there in over there. उसको कपड़े खरीदने के लिए अगर 50 किलोमीटर दूर जाना पड़ रहा है या 100 किलोमीटर दूर ट्रैवल करना पड़ रहा है तो वो चैलेंज है उसके लिए.
Yeah, I just like to add one point to what Kuzima just said. The China, which has probably the same population or a larger population than us, why does this large-scale migration not happen there? And I think that is because the government invested in the infrastructure for the last 25 years and actually built all the satellite cities, which is why you don't see this large-scale migration in a country like that. And I think the least we would expect our government to do is to really invest in this infrastructure and build the infrastructure that will solve a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think one of the tricks is basically to have very good connectivity to the villages and towns so that things are more accessible for them. Another thing is to bring certain economic drivers into these areas, because unless you have the economic drivers, they're going to still move. And this is a huge, like Prasam said, this is a huge problem. It's not a problem that we architects sitting across the table here are going to solve. It's a problem that collectively we as a society and the political of the country, they've got to take this decision. I'm sure they'll build the connectivity because that's already on the agenda. My question is, how will they manage to build skilled activities and develop skills which are viable and translatable, into food and shelter, roti kapda makan for all these people. And I think this is the crucial aspect to it, because today, you see, one thing has happened here. A lot of people had a kind of an ecosystem of domestics, drivers, etc., etc. And we in a city like Mumbai had these skyscrapers and these slums which are adjacent to each other. We are going to find that maybe when things start off, right, that there won't be so much dependency on all these things. And that's going to be sad in a way, because the ecosystem is going to break. These people are going to go back, and then what are they going to have to do? How are we going to help them? And therefore, I feel that, when we do pro bono work, this, that we should find some way of skilling these guys. It may not be construction sites, because smaller construction sites, yes, but larger construction sites are going to get more and more automated. It's already happening. So we are going to have to respond to a very, very big challenge as we move forward. And I think COVID is nothing. It's nothing compared to the large challenge that was there before, both the environmental and social challenge. And if at all, what has happened is that has got the bridge to that challenge has got accelerated through this process. So we are going to have to face that sooner than we were earlier going to face. And I think one good thing from COVID, people have become more collective. They started grouping together. As much as they've been with their families, they've been connecting through the web and the net. And I think that if we all get together and we start working as a community through social media and other means, if not even meet socially, I think that we will be able to find all the solutions to each and every problem that's been posed before us. As someone said, I think Nishant said that, throughout history, we've always met these challenges. And every time we've grown, I don't say we become better, but we've kind of found responses and we've moved on. And I think we will move on. And I'd like to end my session on that positive note that yes, there are challenges, but I think we're going to do it. We're going to all come together and solve these problems and find the right way ahead. Government, no government. Eventually it's society that determines the government. So let's take positive actions from that.
So, Vyasji, can I add something?
Yeah, yes, sir. Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
भैया ये पहला कोविड, ये पहला कोविड नहीं है. This is not the first version of COVID. We see those numbers and we are all worried about it. But this is something which is there today also. When you get your test done, blood test done, I am not a medical guy, But I think so. I understand at least one thing. There is a typhoid in my body. There is a malaria in my body. Only thing, my body is immune to those things, and they cannot be outnumbered to the certain proportions. So probably COVID is going to be like that. One COVID-19 is going to be one of the cases like that. And probably once we have that immunity, probably we are all safe. We are all safe. We are all safe. I feel that we all need to come together and create some social, so for a social well-being of a lot of people. मुझे आज लगता है कि मेरे को आज जाके रूरल एरिया में रहना जरूरी है. मुझे आज लग रहा है कि मुझे कुछ करना चाहिए वहां के लिए. वहां पे जाके कुछ, if I can do farming, I would love to do that. I would love to do that because there are two social causes for it. I create employment through farming, and if I can do something which is very high on technology, I would love to do that because it will give an advancement in the agriculture industry, bring them that and train them so that not me alone, but the farmers all around can come up and start producing more, and that could be taken care of. So if you could bring, and even people who are staying in the city can take those technologies and things like that, which will help them to improve their earnings, I think so we have done our job. We can do at least that much.
Yeah. Very valid point, sir. This farming reminds me, perhaps this is also a break where we should look back and see the possibility of urban farming also. Maybe if somebody wants to take it, and
absolutely,
because so all the terraces are lying vacant, and absolutely we are struggling, and we are complaining that we don't know the source, we don't know the contamination, we don't know the hygiene followed. So if anybody would like to take this point also, I'm saying.
Yeah, I would like to.
I was on a seminar just before this seminar. I was attending one of those urban farming seminars only.
I'd like to add in a comment. Yes. Urban farming is going to be big. If you take a country like Singapore, they have also got into it in a very big way. And in our country, given the size of our metros, given the size of, like you mentioned, huge terraces, this is going to be a viable way of bringing in sustainable living. We don't really have to depend on food that's going to come depending on transportation. Even if it's on a smaller scale, I think urban farming is something that we as architects must push, must be game changers and influencers. Phyto walls are big. They also bring in a lot of oxygen. Having a little patch behind your home, yes, that's also a great way of doing. So I think it should be a form of urban living.
Thank you very much. We have one manufacturer, one product maker among us. Sarath, आप कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे? I have seen you patiently hearing all the architects here. You might have some ideas, both as a user, you are a potential client also, and as a citizen, apart from a product maker, you have something to make your points to all these eminent architects here.
Yeah, thank you, Dinesh. Mine is simple. I picked up a lot of words and learning from this. One is the e-way to highway to e-way, and that's really, and the connectivity of today we have e-way connectivity till the Gram Panchayat level, solving a lot of small issues by the government and the initiatives of the last 2 decades. The Gram Panchayats are connected across India. Same way, we never realized this is the COVID actually has forced us to realize how connected we are on the e-way. As the same way, our infrastructure development happening and connecting, we may see sometime the reverse migrations back to the satellite towns. And like architect Saurabh said, that a lot of migration in China, same kind of equal populations they have to the cities has not happened, could be possibly because they developed infrastructure in 99 cities, whereas our metros are limited to 810. So obviously our populations try to come to the more favorable metros for a living. So these are good, some thoughts which is provoking to think very differently, and also try to face the challenges in a better way, basically because this all things are, this kind of thought processes are going to drive a different change, and probably that's the answer going forward. And before I end, if you allow me, Dinesh, then I have a small questions to ask, which is struggling in my mind. So what does lifestyle means? And the question is to, if Architect Kiran, if with your permission, this question is to you, that what does the lifestyle will mean in future? Like we have been this lifestyle understanding so far, pre-COVID and now during the COVID. And going forward, is the lifestyle is going to mean more about health, hygiene, safety, concern for environment, or it's going to mean something else as what it has been meaning so far?
Okay, thank you. So, I think two things. So one positive thing out of all this COVID pandemic that has come out is I think people have got conscious about health. So, one is that, this whole kind of lockdown is only doing one thing, and social distancing is only doing one thing, is that it's actually kind of delaying the spread, or kind of taking the spread, where we talk about doubling rate, going to 15 days, 16 days, flattening the curve is a buzzword that we are hearing. But that is not a cure for anything that we do. And I think people will have to build immunity. So if you look at the statistics of this whole thing, is that, obviously people who are vulnerable are elderly people, people who have diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. So I think health and wellness is going to become a big thing. I think people will have, so this is one pandemic that has happened, which is COVID-19. Other viruses may come from maybe different parts of the world. And I think we will have to gear up to it. And unless I think health and wellness, across the board, where of course architecture will have to play a role in it, but there are various other things, medicine will have to play a role in it, etc. So I think health and wellness is going to become a big thing, according to me. And I think people will have to become more conscious of their health and well-being, and take care of it to protect themselves against this kind of a pandemic and stuff like that. So I think that to answer your question, I think a healthy lifestyle, exercising, diet, etc., is going to play a very, very big role in as we go forward, honestly speaking. So I just request everybody to just kind of gear up and start doing something about your health, actually.
Kiran bhai, I was doing a webinar with one of the American designer panel, and we all were talking about hospitality. So I have my opinion, and a very serious opinion, which I have been voicing even in other panels also, especially in hospitality, that this COVID-19 has created a situation where we could create a vertical of wellness in our hospitality sector. And it could be a huge business, because see, we understand the way we understand of alignment of chakras. Nobody in the world understands that. We have our Vedas have been talking about it. So why can't we use that? And because what is going to alignment of the chakra going to build is going to build your immunity, and that is something which world is going to be is going to rely on. Everybody in the world, and that could bring in future, it could be a huge wellness travel, tourism which can be brought into this country, and it is going to be a huge business. So if we think about it in thought and give a deep thought to it, probably this is something which is coming, and it's going to go very, very big, very, very big.
Kuzima, just one thing, it's already happening, because I got a clip about 2 days ago from some of the Leela hotels, and they're already promoting this. They've already done some conversions on some of their properties, and they're sending out clips to all sorts of people. So I fully agree with you. It is going to be a new niche, but it's already happening. That's the good news.
Yeah, so I think there will be in this kind of bad news. There's also in all, as everybody says, there's going to be opportunities, and people will have to take those opportunities. And I think it'll evolve over a period of time. So I think I think it'll evolve over a period of time. I agree with you, Kadeva, that I think wellness will become a big industry. So whether it's just to do with hotels and hospitality, but even in other ways, I think wellness is going to become a fairly big thing across. I think whether it's to do with medicines in the industry, I think wearables are going to become a big thing. Wearable technology. So, wearable technology in terms, which gives you your blood pressure, everything, etc., which is already there, but I think it's now going to become much, much bigger. It was a niche market, and that niche market is now going to go to a far more general market. And I think people will have to take opportunities of that nature with two hands as soon as possible.
I have a little thing to add here. Because Ima, what you're talking about goes beyond wellness. It's well-being. Everything right now in the hospitality sector is offered is only wellness. It's spa, which is for your physical wellness. But well-being is of your emotional, mental, and chakras will be really helpful. I mean, I practice healing every single day. But on the hospitality bit, and there's so much we can share with the world. I remember many years ago when I had gone one time to Düsseldorf, and I went to a beer bar, which is about 600 years old. Another time I was in Valencia at one of these places, restaurant, which was again 400 years old. And I thought, oh my God, like, how these countries have these old bars and they've restored it in the same place, same family running. And I looked at, why don't we have this in India? And then when I started doing a bit of a homework and understanding, it's because in India, we've always given more importance to energy and how the food is cooked, by whom it's cooked. And that's why you never saw people eating in public places in anywhere in Nairobi. Back then, it was only at a temple where you were very particular of the energy which went into cooking. It's now that people are eating out all the time, anywhere, everywhere, eating far more than your body needs. You eat more because the mind needs. So I think some of these things are being questioned when all of us have started cooking and can cook anything at home. So whether so much of the hospitality food business will be required going forward if we question our wellness and well-being. Something I'd like to say.
It's going to be healthy food.
Yeah, I would like to go to the next and perhaps the last round of this. See, this fraternity is known as specifiers and influencers. I am using this word influencer now in a different manner. There is a lot of stress in the society. Students of designs, young entrepreneur, public at large, corporate workers, everybody is stressed, thinking about what is going to happen. And I think in this forum, if all of us can have some positive message to the entire community, which is under stress, that will be great. And I would like the young architect Nishan Gupta to start with, followed by everyone, and then architect Ruturai. Nishan, with you.
Thank you. I think what this phase has taught us to be is more patient. Where we were on Instagram or we were on other social networks, we could just connect for a millisecond and we'll flip over to the next image. So everything was driven by the picture we saw, and we were not patient. And now the patience level has, I think, drastically increased for all of us. I think that is one thing Corona has taught us. The second thing, I think it has taught us to live and live life in a very sustainable manner. We are now consuming what we need. Earlier we'll have buffets and there'll be wastage of food. There used to be big spas and the wastage of water. We used to travel for things where we are not really required. So I think it has all taught us that a meeting for which a particular thing that we had to travel 5 times now could be done with 2 Zoom meetings, or two WebEx meetings. So I think all this has taught us that we can have a more sustainable world tomorrow. And I think, like Kiran was saying, doing pro bono work, will continue to do a lot of pro bono work for developers who, as it is, don't pay. So, yeah. So, and we'll just get back to that immediately after this call.
Nishant, I didn't mean that kind of pro bono work. I just want to clarify that. Yeah. That is just bono work. That's not pro bono work. It's just called bono work.
Dr. Puru, some words of wisdom from your side for the public at large, the people around you. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Panu, are you taking this?
Oh yeah, it's addressed to me. Okay. Yeah. I think COVID-19 has been an excellent game changer. I would only look at it very, very positively. It's given us time to reflect, contemplate, And actually, I would go back to our ancient Indian systems of living. It seems ancient, but it has a new relevance today. I think we need to embrace a new set of values, appreciate what is going around us, and connect with each other. This webinar has been a great eye opener to me. I never thought I'll meet a whole bunch of people. The connectivity, the human connect has been fantastic. So I think COVID-19 is a fantastic thing that happened, and I think we also should look at strategies of de-stressing. This Western habit of pushing things fast, running on deadlines, all that needs to go. The main issue is to de-stress, and how we as architects can create spaces, can be game changers to de-stress and look at life a lot more objectively with a lot more patience. And I'm also going to go a stress on Supraja's point that everything in life is energy. It depends how you use it positively and generate positive actions around us. So I think it's a more an issue of looking at a new set of values, ancient as it may seem, but sustainability and stuff like that is going to be big.
Thank you. So a lot of wisdom even from the traditions.
I think we've lost Dinesh. Okay, guys, I need to leave. I have another call at 1:30, which I'm running late for. So, it's a nice meeting everybody. Nice meeting everybody. And, excuse me now because, take care, everybody, and stay safe, stay healthy.
Kiran, I hope this is a pro bono call that you're getting on.
I'm getting onto a pro bono call. Absolutely pro bono call. All today, just now, everything is pro bono. For this first quarter, everything is pro bono. Thanks, Ruturaj. Thank you for moderating this. And
no, thank you so much, Kiran. Thanks for everybody's time. I have, since you are heading for everyone else, I mean, there are certain observations that
sure. No, go ahead. Yeah,
I
please.
have been making in the. So, one is that, this session, it has prompted me to think about, what is important really for us. How do we kind of focus on the essential bits of what we are doing, and then kind of try to unclutter, what I mean, our practices are cluttered with things that may seem unnecessary now. So one is this idea of what is important to us personally. The second, I think, is to, how can we, as a profession, contribute to the larger ideas, whether it's an idea of urban design or migration, or, how can we go beyond the prerogative of, the client and our relationship, and see that how we can affect and in kind of in a positive way look at how we as a profession can make a larger impact. I would also say that one of the things that comes out of this conversation is the issue of quality. I mean, how do we perceive quality, and how do we make sure that people perceive quality, the idea of quality, whether it's this luxury of accumulation. I mean, you want more and more of this, or we look at this whole culture of consumer culture differently and say that, okay, I think everybody reflected on the fact that this slowdown has given us a sense of how do we prioritize what is valuable for all of us. And I think that's pretty much my takeaway from this, apart from the fact that, of course, what Kiran said, pro bono projects. I mean, we would think very seriously about it, Kiran. Thanks a lot for that intervention, and see how we can, what are the typologies and what are the ideas that we can, take from our experience out there and put it in, to the benefit of larger public. So that's, yeah.
Maybe you should look at a publication of just one publication of just pro bono projects. I think that would be a great way to.
That would be a great,
I think that would be very nice to just do, and I think it'll give people the exposure of what other people are doing. See, we are all working in a cocoon, and one doesn't publicize some of this stuff too much and stuff like that. It'd be nice because you're in the publication industry, and I think it might be nice to do it. So, going to call it off at that point. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Anybody,
Thank you.
Kiran, you can head.
Bye, everyone.
Anybody else wants to add something before we close?
No. Thank you. Take
Wonderful
care.
session. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much, all
Thank
of you.
you.
Thank you,
Wonderful
guys.
session. Thanks a
Bye,
lot.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye
Bye.
and namaste.
I would just suggest Johnson to make
Namaste. Yes.
yeah.
Namaste.
Yeah, Nishant. Go
I'll
ahead,
just suggest
Nishant.
Johnson to make 2x6 tiles. I think social distance.
So-
So Nishant, architect Nishant, we already have those kind of sizes. So
Yes, sir.
that's
Don't.
there, but more towards what I picked up from all of you is very enlightening for me to take back to my R&D is to not only just focused on aesthetic, which we have been doing for in a mad rush, and let's push the fact to a functionality. So whereas we have developed a lot of functionality product, but when it comes to while selling those products out of the shop into the marketplace has not taken up because the aesthetic has actually ruled over it the last 7-8 years. Everything surrounding the lifestyle was to show off kind of thing. So it's a good learning and good that it has shaken up our thought again go back to the functionality blended with aesthetics. So that's what we would look forward for. And thank you so much for your enlightening and thought-provoking. It's a great learning from here. Thank you.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Are we still on live? Oh, there are people.
yeah.
Last question of the message to the young architects. I would
Yeah,
say
sure.
less as a professional and more as just a fellow human being. I call my life as a trip, which I keep saying. You know, entry is called birth and exit is death. So if you're running, basically you're running towards the exit. So it's only the journey. So please don't be chasing numbers. Enjoy your journey. You know, look around. Don't fall for the whole number game. And life is very simple. And I think the 60 days must have taught us what's really essential. The best of your luxurious goods are just sitting out there. And yeah, that's it. Enjoy your trip to Earth.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. That's it.
Thank
you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank
So
you. Thank
now-
you. And namaskar for joining us. Thank you.